I'm Sophie Peel. I'm a reporter with Willamette Week. Today, I am sitting down with Kim McCarty, who's the executive director of the Community Alliance of Tenants here in town. Kim, thank you for joining me today. Really appreciate it. So what we're talking about today is the eviction moratorium in Oregon, which, as we know, is expiring today. So come July 1st, Oregonians are expected to pay their current monthly rent. That being said, last week, the federal government did extend its eviction moratorium for an additional month. And so what kind of timeline would Kat ideally like to see? I mean, it's pretty clear that the legislature is not going to take steps to extend it again. But what kind of ideal timeline would Kat have wanted to see with the eviction moratorium? Like, is there a point in the future, like 6 months from now or a year from now or 3 years from now, when we know that we've expended our resources and that people have regained stability? Like, that seems almost that seems very kind of utopic almost.
Well, I think if over a year ago you had said that we would be extending the eviction moratorium as long as we have, people would have said the very same thing that you just said. It's utopic, wouldn't be possible. But we've discovered that actually it was completely necessary, very possible. And then we already have past experience that tells us, when we're in a crisis like this, that our low-income communities take the brunt of it, and it takes them years to recover. And it takes us, we've already done Portland State University already came out with a study that said if we don't take action of this nature, it will take $1 to $3 billion of public resource to just address the health concerns related to this, versus the 400 to maybe 800 million of projected rent that is currently unpaid.
Mm-hmm. So I know, kind of the number that's been bopping around the state about how many people are at risk of eviction come July 1st, maybe August 1st now, is 80,000. And,
Mm-hmm.
Currently Multnomah County says we have about 4,000 visibly homeless people, and then about 16,000 people who are visibly homeless, as well as sort of on the margins of becoming homeless. I mean, how can you quantify adding 80,000 people to that metric? I mean, we've been fighting so hard to get that metric down over the years. And what would it look like for the nonprofits who are sort of tasked with, dealing with this and getting people connected to housing and resources? And I mean, what would 80,000 people added to that system look like?
It would be a complete meltdown of our systems. We already know, nationally, advocates are saying it'll take 1 to 3 years to get our low-income community in back to recovery with our current issues. That's what we've seen historically. A household that is facing eviction can be on their record for a very long time, if not their lifetime. And we know that it can take decades for people to recover from an eviction. So whole communities that have faced something like this, we're talking about really devastating a whole group of people. But in terms of what our social services agencies have been saying here in Oregon, what I'm hearing is that, as you said, they're already at capacity. So even if it's just a few hundred more households in the system, that will be a crisis. If it's a few thousand, that is unimaginable. If it's 80,000, that's completely unimaginable, because no one is doing the work we know to address that. There isn't a budget for tent cities, right? There isn't a budget for emergency shelters. There's no plan in place that I know of that would address housing that many households. So really, the only realistic way to help people is to help them remove that debt, keep housed in place, because the current system is only designed really to address the chronic homelessness that's been with us for decades, and it took us decades to get to the point that we're at right now, to just address that crisis.
Are there sort of different, how do people hang on to sort of a semblance of housing before it goes to worst case scenario, which is sleeping on the streets? Do you expect a portion would move across state lines to stay with family, or, move to motels, or sort of what are different ways that do you foresee people, if they are evicted or have to leave their housing, sort of adapt before ending up in its tent?
Yeah. We're hearing anecdotally that there are already migrations happening
Mm.
nationwide. I don't know how that's happening in Oregon. We already know that in Oregon, we already have a housing shortage. So if you're evicted, the question is, where are you going to go? Where is housing affordable? And essentially, it's not affordable anywhere in Oregon, especially for our low-income communities. We already have a housing crisis related to the wildfires that's putting pressure on our housing stock. That's thousands of families from that area. So, to answer that question, how it will play out, people are going to go into debt. People, of course, don't want to lose their housing. They're going to do everything in their power to seek help, but help we've already experienced is taking time to get to people.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to borrow from family. They're going to put expenses on their credit card so that they can continue to pay that housing expense until finally all of the options run out, and then that's when we see people finally facing eviction, and then how that will play out in the courts. We hope it will play out fairly, but we're worried because we have seen it already where judges have been where landlords have been bringing to court defective notices. That's well out of proportion to what we've seen historically. So clearly landlords are using the tools that they have to evict people improperly.
Mm-hmm.